lecture is a little bit dark because we're going to talk about the devil and the two beasts. You may recall from the last lecture, I read from Revelation chapter 12 and discussed who I interpreted the first woman to be that I was discussing. And in that portion of scripture, there was a description of the great red dragon, the serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan. And so I wanted to say a little bit about him here. And I want to say that this is an overview. So if you want to learn more about this, there is quite a bit more in the book than what I'll be discussing. But there is some things in there that I did want to elaborate on a little bit. And the things that I wanted to elaborate on are what you see there, where it says he has 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 diadems. In the second lecture, I talked about the importance of numbers and what they represent in the book of Revelation and where we get them from. And so I want to elaborate on those numbers right here. 7, and this is a repeat for the most part, but 7 symbolizes fullness, completion, and a finished work. It is God's perfection. I stress the fact that it means a finished work or perfection, and but fullness and completion was also in the definition. Well, when you think of the devil, you think of the number 7, and you think of okay, the horns represent authority. No, they represent power. The heads represent authority, and the crowns represent rulership. All right? But when you think of that in terms of the devil, and you think of him and who he is, and from the rest of the scripture as we know him, we see him as being completely evil, full of, when we talk about somebody being full of the devil, well, he's full of the devil. You can't get any more evil or more wicked. You can't find a worse tyrant than the devil. Okay? And that's why I put perfection at the end. I don't think that's perfect. That's the most imperfect that a person could be. But I mean, he's perfectly evil. I mean, he personifies evil in the worst way, as much as can be. So how he uses power, or I mean how he uses his authority and how he rules is the ultimate evil. All right. 10 symbolizes completeness in the sense of being finished. It is God's standard or boundary. All right. He has 10 horns. So God has limited him somewhat. He's got all this power, but God is omnipotent. He has all power. So God has limited him in what he can do, although he tries to get away with as much as he can. Okay, let's just put it that way. He tries to get away with as much as he can and does get away with a lot and has gotten away with a lot. So I wanted to comment on that. The 7 heads and the 10 horns of the red dragon represent the complete authority and power Satan has in the earth. He acquired it through deceit during the fall of man in Eden. The 7 diadems he wears represents his complete rulership over his dark kingdom. He's actually, when I think of power and I think of horns, he's weaponized that. He's weaponized that power and used it not for good, but for evil, to strike back at God and to strike back at God's creation, strike back particularly at God's followers, his people and his church. He uses that against them. We know that we are of God and that the whole world lies in the power of the evil one. He gained that power when man gave up dominion, and Satan took dominion. He took dominion, and he has held that power until Christ came along. Christ came along. For he, Jesus, rescued us from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of his beloved Son. Colossians 1:13. Now, that goes for those believers in Christ who have received Jesus as their Lord and Savior, and know that he has taken them out of that control that the devil has over them, and given them the option, the ability to serve God and what's the word? Prosper, achieve what God had designed them for. All right. So that's what I wanted to say about Satan. The Son of God appeared for this purpose, to destroy the works of the devil. 1 John 3:8. And then there's a few scriptures before this one on the right here in Revelation where it talks about a war in heaven. There was a war in heaven, and Satan was discarded. He and a third of the host or I don't know, angels. That's been a subject of discussion for a while, but they were kicked out. They were removed from up there, and they were removed from being able to accuse the brethren, those that follow Christ, of sin and shortcomings. Okay, so it says, now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ has come, for the accuser of the brethren has been thrown down, who accuses them before God day and night. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and because of the word of their testimony, and they did not love their life, even when faced with death. So, he has been thrown down. He's not happy about being thrown out of heaven, but he has been thrown down, and he is making war against the saints while he is down here. Now, we talked about the woman. The woman is the harlot of Babylon, the the symbol of the world without God. That group of people, which is different from those that have separated themselves to God, which is the bride of Christ. They are down here, and they are drunk with the blood of the saints, but they have a spiritual input. They have a spiritual input from the devil, and we're going to see that. And we're going to see that with the two beasts. Now, I've asked the question, and this is what I've tried to answer through my research and study, and I'm going to try to answer that through this lesson. Who are the two beasts? Who are the two beasts? There are two beasts mentioned in Revelation, but who are they specifically? Now remember, this is a vision. This is a vision. There is more to it than what we see, hear, and read. So with that, use your imagination here, but we're going to read what it says in Revelation about the first beast. And the dragon, that's the devil, and the dragon stood on the sand of the seashore. He's down on earth here now. Then I saw a beast coming up out of the sea. Coming up out of the sea. We know that the sea is the place where the woman is, where the sea of humanity. That's where she. So this beast is coming up out of the sea. She's part of the sea. I don't know if you say a cast off or generated from the sea or something, but she's right there in that. having 10 horns and 7 heads. Almost the same, but a little bit, the 10 and the 7 are switched a little bit here. And it's like she has more horns or more power or more weaponization, or the beast does, not she, the beast, having 10 horns and 7 heads, and on his horns were 10 diadems, 10 crowns, and on his heads were blasphemous names. And the beast which I saw was like a leopard, and his feet were like those of a bear, and his mouth was like the mouth of a lion. Violent, predatory animals. And the dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority. I saw one of his heads as if it had been slain, and his fatal wound was healed. It's a fatal wound, but it looks like it was healed. It looks like it was healed, looks like he's okay, but it's a fatal wound. And the whole earth was amazed and followed after the beast. They worshiped the dragon because he gave his authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast, and who is able to wage war with him?" There was given to him a mouth speaking arrogant words and blasphemies, and authority to act for 42 months was given to him, an indefinite period of time. And he opened his mouth in blasphemies against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, that is, those who dwell in heaven. We are seated with him in heavenly places, but he's out to blaspheme God and his church, his followers. It was also given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And authority over every tribe and people and tongue and nation was given to him, to everyone. All who dwell on the earth will worship him, everyone whose name has not been written from the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who has been slain. So that is the first beast. Now, that word beast, where do we get that from? Where do we get that from, and who does that represent? And it describes him as, he uses 3 predatory animals to describe him. The picture or the figure of speech of the beast that we just read in Revelation 13 originally comes from a dream and a vision. It's both when you read it, from that Daniel had in Daniel chapter 7. We see the very same predatory, violent animals in Revelation that we've seen already in Daniel. Let me just read this to you from Daniel, starting in verse 4. The first was like a lion and had the wings of an eagle. I kept looking until its wings were plucked, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man. A human mind also was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second one resembling a bear. And it was raised up on one side, and 3 ribs were in its mouth between its teeth. And thus they said to it, Arise, devour much meat. After this I kept looking, and behold, another one, like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrifying and extremely strong, and it had large iron teeth. It devoured and crushed and trampled down the remainder with its feet. And it was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. So it's an old-fashioned picture there, but it's supposed to be Daniel looking at these 4 beasts. Now, the idea of 4, well, they weren't beasts, but Nebuchadnezzar had a dream earlier in the book of Daniel. And because the other wise men in the land couldn't tell Nebuchadnezzar what the dream was, then Daniel volunteered, told the king what the dream was that he had and what it meant. And he talked about 4 kingdoms in that dream. And, one of them was present day Babylon, the head of gold. Um, the next one, the upper chest and part that was silver, that was Media Persia. And then the abdomen, that was Greece, bronze. And then the bottom, the legs of iron and clay, which we don't see a beast here in Daniel, but it does talk about, iron and smashing. What's it say? It said it trampled down the remainder. It sounds like the very same 4 kingdoms or empires. And we do know, if you study later on in Daniel in the book, you'll see towards the end, historically what happens. It's after Daniel's gone. Daniel only lives to see the first 2 empires there, Babylon and Medo Persia. But we know historically, from history, we know that those were the 4 kingdoms that are described there, even in a lot of detail there. There's a lot of details there, and historically that's true. So that represents 4 governments, but they were more than just governments. They were empires. They did more than just rule an isolated group of people. They ruled a large mass of people throughout the then known world. And I guess the then known civilized world, you could say. And they brought in more than just control governmentally or through military means, but they also brought in changes of culture, changes of what they wanted their people to believe, how they wanted their people to talk, which language would be predominant, and also religiously, how people would think and what they would believe, whether it would be idolatry and which gods to worship. All of that was part of it. Some of that was still around. I mean, from this, even though it was during the time of Rome's control, that was around, and Jesus came around. The people were predominantly speaking Greek there in Palestine. They, because of their religious background, they were, they knew Hebrew. At least the most educated people knew and could speak Hebrew. But for the most part, Greek was the language of their culture, and that dates back to the Grecian culture. And of course, the New Testament, which we have that in English, was translated from the Greek language, which it was originally written in. So what does this first beast represent? It represents institutions. It represents human institutions that we have developed, that mankind has developed, and mankind controls. Well, the devil has taken this to use it. He uses this, and he uses the woman who is the seed of mankind. He uses these institutions. He gets in there, and some of them start out really good, but the devil gets more and more in control. And of course, he uses these institutions against God's people, against the church. All right. So that's what this represents, is human institutions, the beast. The beast. We don't like to think of, maybe if you're an American like me, you don't probably like to think of the American government as part of the beast system. And we also don't like to think of some of our religious system, even some of the way Christianity is used, as part of the beast system. But it is. It's an institution made by man, even the religious system. In the picture that we had in the 11th chapter of Revelation, where John was told to measure out the naos. He was told to leave those on the outer court out. There's people that practice Christianity in a religious form, but they're not true believers. They're not born again of the Spirit. They aren't following the Lamb wherever he goes. They are not. They're not the real deal, so to speak. And the church can be just come another institution that the devil can actually use in a way, to control people and get them to do what he wants, whether it's just to create chaos and competition and hatred and fighting and squabbling and all that stuff. It doesn't matter. He can use any institution, and that's the beast system, is institutionalism. Now there's another beast. And I'm going to read this. Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. He looks like a lamb, but he speaks like a dragon. So he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence. And he makes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound was healed. He performs great signs, so that he even makes fire come down out of heaven to the earth in the presence of men. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs which it was given him to perform in the presence of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast, who had the wound of the sword and has come to life. And it was given to him to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast would even speak, and cause as many as do not worship the image of the beast to be killed. And he causes all, the small and the great, and the rich and the poor, and the free men and the slaves, to be given a mark on their right hand or on their forehead. And he provides that no one will be able to buy or to sell, except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man, and his number is 666. Now this again is a vision, and this is a figure of speech. But it does make it clear there at the end that this is a man. This is a person. That 666 is the number of man. Talked about that with the numerology. I submit to you that this is a leader, charismatic leader, somebody, I don't mean charismatic in the sense of charismatic Christianity, but I mean he's a very gifted speaker, orator, leader, who is supportive and of the institutionalism that there is, and he could be religious, governmental, cultural, cultural icon. They can be all these things, but they are tools of the devil. Tools of the devil. Now we can think of this in particular with we've had leaders all during this, all through time, since the resurrection on. I was just reading something the other day about Edie, what's his name? He was a military general that took over Uganda. Idi Amin, that's what it was. He took over Uganda. Well, the Christian leaders there came to him, and they wanted him to listen to what they said and to be left unharmed by his government. Well, he seemed sympathetic and let him and listened to them, but it was a while after that he had them all killed. He viewed them as a threat to his government. All right, and we've seen this over and over. You may have seen this with Castro. We've had leaders like, of course, Hitler, who, seemed like he was in favor of the church. And then before you know it, after a while, in the church, the cross was replaced with the swastika. That's true. And so these people are, what's the word? Pretty smooth talkers. And before you think they're on their side, and people are trusting in them and the institution that they represent. But before you know it, they're the ones that are persecuting the church. They're making it illegal for you to worship, and they may arrest you and have you killed for that. And this beast is a deceiver. He's a deceiver. He's a tool in the hand of the devil. But this could be a man or a woman. It's just it's I think it's a leader. We see this. I've got a number of accounts of things in the book about this kind of thing. So to kind of sum up, the difference between the two beasts is that the first one is our institutions, which they're human institutions. They're human institutions, but the devil uses them. He uses his demons and other high-level spirits to come down and take advantage of those things to try to destroy the church, to try to persecute the church. And then the second beast, which looks like a lamb, but he speaks like a dragon, is actually human leaders. They could be religious, they can be governmental. If you think of back during the Reformation and before that time, even before that, if you study church history, the organized church, which was the church of the saint, viewed any church other than that as a threat to them. And so we have accounts of people that are Christians that are burned at the stake, or killed in other ways for things like wanting to have a Bible and be able to read it, have a Bible, or preach on the just shall live by faith. Things that we take for granted now as Christians during the Reformation might have cost you your life. And of course, in some places of the world, that still goes on in various degrees. Depends on how much freedom they have or how Christianized they were. But again, these leaders, they are, they talk good, but end up being your enemy. Okay, so there we have that's what the two beasts are. Institutionalism that the devil used, that he demonized, that he weaponized, and then outstanding people that he can use they come out of the sea. They are very gifted people, but they are also weaponized to use against the church. It's almost like the devil and the two beasts are like a false trinity. They're like a false trinity, and they're the thing that they use is deception, to come against the church, to deceive, and then eventually to try to eliminate the church. The beast that you saw and is not and is about to come, it's almost like who was, who is, and who is to come. It's almost like, talking about God, but in a false sense. The beast that you saw and is not and is about to come up out of the beast, out of the abyss, and go to destruction. And those who dwell on the earth, whose name has not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will wonder when they see the beast that he was and is not and will come. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits, and they are 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other has yet to come, and when he comes, he must remain a little while. The beast which was and is not is himself also an 8th, and is one of the 7. and he goes to destruction. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but they receive authority as kings with the beast for 1 hour. These have one purpose, and they give their power and authority to the beast. Now, this again is visionary, so some have, in some interpretations of Revelation, and I understand that, they have actually taken this to be very literal. They've tried to identify historically or future tense who these will be and try to interpret this literally. Now, if there's anything that's literal in here at all, it might be for the audience, the immediate audience, when John recorded this, where it says 5 have fallen, 1 is. That may be 5 institutions or 5 world empires, like, let's say, Egypt, Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, and the 1 is Rome, and then there's 1 yet to come. Now, the 1 that's yet to come to them could be anything. It could be Islam. You know, that controlled a large part and still controls a large part of the world today. It could be communism. That controls a large part of the world today. All right? So you know, that's and guess what? They are in opposition to Christians. So they kind of fit right into that. They fit right into that. And then it says the beast is himself, that's a person, is an 8th and is one of the 7. He's part of the other 7. And he goes to destruction. They're all going to be destroyed. They're all going to end up in the lake of fire. All right? But the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom. And again, I don't think that's literal, but if you think of all the totalitarian governments that we've had, okay, and you think of all the false prophets and the false religions, some of the things like, you know, the Jim Jones and the who are Reverend Moon and I hate to say it, but maybe some even Christian leaders that end up falling, that aren't what they are really cracked up to be. They fall. I'm just saying, I'm not saying they are or they aren't. I'm just saying, you know, if you aren't with God and if you're not totally depending on Him, it's real easy to get deceived. You can get deceived. But it's a number 10, and that's a number of completeness. That's a standard or a boundary. God has, you know, control of that. God has control of that. It reaches only a point, but there's a limit there. There's a limit there. But they have authority as kings with the beast for 1 hour. With the beast for 1 hour. That beast, that human leadership or rulership or whatever. And they have one purpose, and they give their power and authority to the beast, the institution that the devil uses. All right? These will wage war against the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them because he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And those who are with him are the called and chosen and faithful. Revelation 17, 8 through 14. And this scripture right here in Revelation 19 follows the account where we see the King of Kings and Lord of Lords on a white horse with a crown, with many crowns on his heads. It doesn't say how many. It's like an unlimited. He's ruler all over all. He's, you know, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Says he has eyes like the flames of fire, the sword coming out of his mouth, and he has, you know, the warriors from heaven with him. It says that they assembled, and I saw the beast and the kings of the earth assembled to make war against him who sat on the horse, against Jesus Christ, and against his army, the army of heaven. And the beast was seized, and with him the false prophet who performed the signs in his presence, by which he deceived those who had received the mark of the beast, and those who worshipped his image. These two were thrown alive into the lake of fire, which burns with brimstone. So they have their just rewards, their end. God will God will have his day with them. You know, he has them under wraps. He has them controlled. They're limited. And their time will come and they'll be thrown into the lake of fire. So that gives you an idea of who the beast and the false prophet are. They institutions and charismatic leaders that are, aligned with the devil and with the other beast. And they use the harlot, the whore of Babylon, the world that is not part of the church, that actually is in opposition to the church. All of that the devil uses to persecute the church. And the church listening to that now or listening to that anytime in history realizes again that persecution is part of being a Christian. Persecution is part of being a Christian. So you're not doing something wrong by being a Christian. You are following Jesus, and this is something that you can expect, because all who live godly will suffer persecution, wrote our dear brother Apostle Paul. And Jesus said, if they persecute me, they will persecute you. But they will get their reward, their judgment. So, like I said, this is kind of a dark subject. There's a lot more information in the book than what I have presented. This was just an overview. But if you want to contact us, if you want to get books, of course, there's our website. Check on under products. But if you actually want to ask me a question about the material I'm presenting, there is an email there, and you may do that, and I'll do my best to respond and answer your question. So God bless you. Thank you for joining us. The next lesson will be on the what is the millennium, or is there a millennium? What is 1,000 years? That's the question that I will be answering in the next lecture. So thank you for listening to this, and please join us for the next lecture. God bless you.